So we're going to continue our rocket model right here. I'm going to work on the wings and the glass window over here that has a pretty unique shape. I'm going to be using a different set of tools called curves. Right now, the only curve tool we're going to be working on is the EP curve tool. You'll find it by going to curves and surfaces and then clicking this third button from left to right. Right? Now, the way this works, I need to make sure I'm also in an orthographic view. And what it allows me to do is that I can create points by clicking. And when I create my second point, I can click and drag and position it and continue to go down the shape of my wing. If I mess up like I did right here, that's okay. I can go, once I press enter, I can fix that by right clicking on my object and hitting control vertex. And it's going to show me some of these points that are created as a result. And I can modify this curve to fix that. Right? The advantage of this method is that I can continue adjusting this curve even after I create my mesh, so I don't have to worry about it being perfect from the get-go. Right? In object mode, once I have my object selected, I'm going to go over to create and look for the option called sweep mesh. If you guys don't have this option yet, that's because the plugin itself is not turned on. You can go to Windows, right? I just turned that on and it created this cylinder shape here. But if you guys don't have Sweep Mesh, you can go to Windows, Settings and Preferences, Plugin Manager, right? And then type Sweep Mesh, and you make sure that the sweep.ml is turned on, right? If you only click on Loaded, it will only turn on every time. It will only turn on for this one session. If you want it to open every time you open Maya, you make sure that auto load is also enabled. That way, whenever Maya fires up, it also turns on this plugin. Right. So I just created that surface. I'm just gonna show it again, even though it's on the video. You go to Create with your object selected, your curve, Sweep Mesh, and it creates this cylinder, right? This cylinder shape or this cable shape right here. And if you notice on my right side, a new menu popped up, right? This is my Sweep Mesh editor or creator. And if I have my object selected or my curve selected, I can access it. And it allows me to do some pretty cool stuff like, for example, I can taper it. If I head on over to taper, I can change its basic shape. For example, right now it's just extruding it like a cylinder. I can make it a bit more cubed, like so. Right, try to match the concept a little bit more. Here I would say the wing shape might be a bit more open to interpretation depending on how you guys want to model it. It might be a bit thicker, it might be a bit thinner, depending on how you work. The thing is, I can manipulate all of these properties by playing with my sliders. And right now, if I turn on my wire mesh, right here, I'll notice that it's a bit low poly. So under the interpolation window, I'm just going to change it from precision to start to end, and that should give me a few more polys to play with. And I can scale that down just to a number of polygons where it's still maintaining my main shape without adding too many polygons to my scene. I can also make sure that the cap is turned on right here under Sweep Mesh Properties. I can change that. And something I kind of want to play with as well, things like the quarter radius, for example. Right. I'm just going to head on over to front view real quick. Sweep Mesh Creator. And notice that right now it's not making contact with my rocket. So what I'm going to do is I just go over to X-ray mode. I have my curve selected. Right click on the curve. It's not letting me. Let me just hide my curve here first by just pressing H and selecting it. Selecting the curve, control vertex. I'm going to reselect this. Oh, wait, yeah, that didn't work. Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to change my component mode in my curve to control vertex, but since I'm hovering over a polygon shape, it just gives me the options for the polygon I'm hovering over, not the one I have selected. It's a little weird, but that's what happens. I'm just gonna press Control 1 to isolate my model. It's just Control 1. The mnemonic I use, it's literally you're choosing to view this one object you have selected, right? So Control 1, or you can view it right here as an option, isolate selected, right? Hover over the surface, Control Vertex. I press Control 1 again to bring everything up. And this is the beauty of Sweep Mesh. Now I can alter my curve and it updates my mesh in real time, right? So it's non-destructive. Non-destructive meaning that I can keep making changes to this surface, right? Without worrying about having to undo a process. And let me turn off the X-ray just to see how that's looking. That looks kind of nice, like so. Then I can later manipulate this shape a little bit better to get that round shape we have in our concept. But this is already the base of the wing created. I'm going to leave it as is, and then I'll show you guys how to duplicate it. So it goes around our shape. Next thing I'm going to be doing is creating the heart-shaped window with our curve. So we just go back again to our front view, right, orthographic front. Turn on the X-ray. And then I'm going to select this object here, and I'm going to turn this magnet, right? This is a live surface now, and all you have to understand about this right now is that any object I stick to this, it's going to work like a magnet. It's just going to go over its surface. So, right, I could draw over my surface or project over that surface itself. So I'm going to go back over to my curve, my EP curve tool, and I'm just going to draw this heart shape. I'm only going to draw half of it. I'm going to teach you guys how to mirror afterwards. Again, not perfect, just trying to get that more or less. A little funky, but we can always fix that. I'm going to turn off my, right. I turned off the live. Now I don't have to worry about the vertices sliding all over the place because I just wanted a template shape. If I go back to my perspective view, this is what happened. It hugged the surface of the rocket. Right, so now I don't have to adjust it manually. What I can do now, right click, select my object, select my curve, create, sweep mesh, and it's a little funky right now, right? Kind of default settings, the size is a little bit too big, so we can scale down the size profile of the curve. And I like to change it from precision to start to end, just because it lets me work a little bit more low poly from the get-go. Because precision, you kind of have to go bit by bit, and if you go a bit too high to 100%, it just gives you way too much topology, so just swapping it to start to end. And if you want to be even more optimal, you can click on the optimize option. This just pretty much deletes any curve or any edge that isn't contributing all that much to the final result. Right, now it's a matter of playing with a shape that kind of feels right. I kind of like the arc right now. What I could do later is just keep extruding to create the inner window. Right, so I would say between polygon or arc, I think I like arc a little bit more. Front view. Now it's just a matter of matching that concept, right? So turn on the X-ray. I'm just testing it out. Select my control vertex. Let me move that around, something like that. Try to match the shape as best as possible, right? Getting a little funky right now. because of the perspective. I think it's best if I just disconnect the heart from the curve, right? This shape. In order to do that, I'm just going to click on this little clock and list icon. This is the history of the object. So if you select your object, you click this little clock icon, it removes it, and I want to center my pivot by clicking on this crosshair over here. Now I can directly interact with my shape. Select here, scale that to center, move that around. So yeah, that's looking, it's looking pretty good, right? So once I'm finished and satisfied with my final shape, what I'll do is I'll just select it, head on over to mesh, and look for the mirror option right here. Right now I kind of messed it up a bit, and that's because it's going from left to right to do the mirror, or from the negative direction to the positive direction. So I'll just swap that from negative to positive, and I'll crank down the merge threshold a little bit, put it in around 0.01 so that it actually welds the topology a little better. We pretty much created our heart shape for our rocket. The topology is a little messy. In my case, what I like to do right now is get rid of some of these weird welds that occurred. So I'll use this tool over here, known as the target weld. I'm going to start welding some of these areas, something like this. Turn that into a triangle, merge this point and this point. Kind of bring back that heart shape. Something like that. So we can clean this up even a little bit more if I weld this. Oh, this here, that there. There we go. And that's pretty much the heart created, right? Here's some adjustment. There's a general gist. To create the center, what we can do is basically start extruding from this shape. Control E. Control E again. And scale a little bit inward. Like that. And then we just keep extruding here. Bit. I'm just going to slowly close in to the heart shape. There we go. And assuming that I have an equal number of edges, right here it says I have 40 edges. If you guys want to see your poly count, you can go over to display, heads up display, and then turn on poly count. This allows you to see how many edges or polygons you have in your scene. It's just always good to have in hand, because now I know I have an equal number of edges to play with, or an even number, which is always best. I'm just going to go in here and start closing out this heart, right? Another tool we're going to be using, if you head on over to your modeling toolkit, you can use the bridge option. And this allows you to connect two edges with each other. Now the game here, right, it's going to be a bit of a puzzle solving experience where I just want to make sure that I can connect the ends of each piece of the heart with each other. Just making the selection, pressing the G key to repeat the last step, which was my bridge. And in my case, like I said, it might depend on how you guys created it. I might have to add some additional lines across the heart right here. I'm going to use this other tool, right? We're going to busting out some more tools here as we're working. I have the multi-cut tool, And I'm going to test this little option right here. If you double click over the settings, I'm going to use the edge flow option. I'm going to turn that on. And what that does is that it kind of softens the model as you guys add more lines, right? It adds a bit of a curve to it as we're cutting. So right now I'm cutting and then bridging the heart pieces just to give it that bit of a curvature. It's definitely a little messy, but we can clean that up later. So let's select, bridge, select, go here, here, bridge, and then I can also bridge this area. I'm just gonna go over here, select both ends, right click, and I'm gonna edit the edge flow. I'm just selecting this line specifically because if I select this entire loop and I try to average it, it might mess up the exterior of the heart. It doesn't mess it up that much actually. You can kind of play around with it. There we go. Using the G key again to repeat that step. And next I'm just gonna select all of these faces, including this tiny little face right here that kind of got away. Here. Oh wait, I just noticed I did not weld this. Oh, that's my mistake. This piece is not welded. Then I add an extra line here. No, I don't like that. Oh. Just gonna delete that here. Then add another line. This is gonna form a bit of a triangle, but that's fine. Using the target weld to close that off. And then using the bridge. There we go. All right, that worked. Now I'm gonna select all these faces. By the way, I'm using tab. If you hold down tab, you can add to your selection by clicking and dragging. If you wanna remove from your selection, you hold tab over faces you've had selected, and that also works. Let me see if by holding shift right click, I have, no, the average option is for vertices. So I'm gonna transfer my selection from faces to vertices by holding down control and right click, going to vertices, pressing shift right click again, and I should have the average option right here. I'm gonna increase the iterations a bit more, averaging again, and that essentially is just cleaning up some of that mess we had later on. This part got a little messed up. Just gonna scale that and shift that into position like so. All right, so you guys kind of noticed that was a lot of work. I'm not gonna do that over here. I'm gonna save myself some time by just cutting this heart in half again. A little redundant, right? But the point is that now I know for a fact that these areas match, right? These two areas match, they're identical, they're symmetrical. So I can delete this with confidence and then remirror it, right? So I just selected the faces right down the middle and I deleted them with backspace. Delete that. And then I head on over to mesh and then I give it another mirror. And I change the direction from negative to positive. And I might tick down the merge threshold to 0.01. And there we go. Just give that a smooth preview just to see how that's looking. Not looking too bad, right? So we can modify this a bit. There we go. And then shift the slide. All right. I'd also kind of want to bevel these edges right here. So if you double click on an edge and then you press bevel and you increase the segments around diffraction a bit, it basically softens edges a bit better. Right. Now back to the wings. Let's say I wanted to copy these shapes. I need to fix this a little bit. This is, right, I'll come back to this and fix the shape. But if you guys are satisfied with your final shape, what I'm gonna do is, right now my pivot is right in the middle of my scene. And what it's gonna allow me to do is rotate perfectly around my model. So I'm gonna delete my history just to disconnect the curve from the wing. I'm gonna press Shift D, not Control D, Shift and D, and I'm gonna rotate 90 degrees around my rocket, and I'm gonna just tap Shift D again, 2 more times, and that's gonna duplicate the entire wings around the rocket. We definitely have to do some adjustments to the proportions, right? It's not matching the concept 100%, and this is definitely a little awkward. But we can do these fixes later on. Right now, I just want to show you guys how you can duplicate the wings just by pressing Shift D. Rotating, you hold down the J key to snap rotate, Shift D, and then Shift D. Right? You don't have to duplicate that every time now. You can just do that little trick. Alternatively, you could mirror the wings. Right? You go to Mesh, Mirror, turn off from negative to positive. Right? You have both ends, and then you can select that, Control D, and then rotate. And that essentially duplicates the wings. Come on, man. Mesh, Mirror. Positive. There we go. As soon as I have another duplicate. Yeah, I have a bit of another duplicate over here. I'm just going to delete that. Use this one. There we go. Control D. And then rotate. That's also another way you can do the duplication. Right? Obviously, there's some areas we do have to clean up. Right, definitely changing the positions of the wing a bit, playing around with the size, but that's just, right now, that's adjustments that we can do. That's just a technique. For the whipped cream, and that would be the last thing for now, right? We're gonna do a mixture of both the heart and the wings themselves using the sweep mesh. So I'm gonna select my rocket, I turn on the live again, and I'm going to use the curves, right, my EP curve tool. I'm going to turn off my concept for now. I'm going to freehand this a little bit, and I'm going to turn off my X-ray. And with my live surface on, I'm just going to draw a bit of a spiral shape that goes along the top of the rocket, something like that. Press the Enter key, right? I'm going to turn off the live surface, right-click Control Vertex, and I'm just going to pull this up a little bit. Didn't mean to drag these around. Something like that. Same over here. And with the object, with the curve selected, create sweep mesh. It creates this humongous mess that we have to clean up. So you just play around with the scale a little bit, change this from position to start to end, and we increase. Right, and that's essentially the whipped cream. The cherry on top, you know, that's literally a sphere or a subdivided cube that we can place on top, give it a little stem, right? That's pretty easy. I don't think you need a tutorial for that. But this is essentially most of the rocket done, right? Now all we have to do is refine the shape.